Hey everyone, I am RetroDeath. On my channel, in general, you will find vlogs and rants. I talk about metal and a lot about video games because, quite honestly, there's nothing that makes me happier than talking about the shit that I love. A concept lost on most people these days, unfortunately. For this video, I would like to talk about my experiences with The Legend of Zelda. The February of this year, 2016, marked the 30th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda in Japan. For Europe and America, it's gonna be next year, so we reached quite like the middle point. And I felt like sharing my stories. I'm 32 years old. I grew up with the NES. I grew up with Zelda starting at the very first game, and I figured to celebrate the 30th anniversary, instead of making some kind of super fancy edited collage or anything, I really wanted to talk about what these games mean to me from start to finish. People these days, they laugh at quotes like, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. I never understand to this day the joke about this catchphrase. It's on memes everywhere, people use it left and right on t-shirts, on quotes, they make fun of it. I do not understand the joke. But maybe that's just me, because I grew up with these games. As a kid, being thrown in an open world video game like this was intense, especially back then. You didn't have an adventure of this scale back in those days. With growing fear, you went into that first cave. This old wise man says the world you just entered is dangerous. You really shouldn't go alone. And he offers you that sword so you can protect yourself. Was I glad when I got that first sword? I finally felt ready. I've been a Zelda fan from the very start. Like I said, I grew up with these games. I grew up with The Legend of Zelda on the NES, discovering every secret in every hidden nook and cranny, burning away bushes to find stairways, walking through walls without any indication whatsoever, with every boss fight, talking to every person, traveling through graveyards and mountains until you finally kill Ganon and save the princess. And then you did all of it over again, and the second quest after beating the game, all new dungeons awaited you. I felt Ganon like took his revenge, and he sure as hell wasn't gonna make things any easier. I was only like 5, I think, when I beat the game for the first time. When I was very small, like from the second I could sit, and I would be this annoying little kid messing with my father's stereo set and all that stuff. I would mess with the volume dial, so what they would do to calm me down is put me in front of the NES when my brothers were playing video games, and that would calm me down. When I was old enough to be able to hold a controller, I never let the controller go again. The adventures I lived through the first game were amazing. You started off with nothing, you felt so powerless, but the lust for adventure drove you to your limits. A little while after me and my brothers had all played the first game to death, we got our hands on another game through my uncle. My uncle was like the only family member I knew that used to love the NES, and we often borrowed games from him. The Adventure of Link. When I stepped out on that field and the first monster sprite jiggled into me and that sound effect came, dragging me into this 2D side view level, my mind was blown. I didn't think Zelda could drag me into the adventure even more so than it had done before, but it did! The battles were more intense, the music was more epic, the levels were huge, and the boss fight had my adrenaline running faster and harder than ever before. Even to this day, these boss fights hold up. There were countless of villages, this game even rivaled the amount of villages you see these days in Zelda games. So many people to talk to, invisible pathways, random ass mysteries to solve. The world felt so much more immersive, mostly due to the side-scrolling view of the game, and the overworld map had so much more to offer as well. I love side-scrolling video games, and this Zelda is still one of my favorites to this day. The game was hard. Not as hard as some other games back then. Definitely not as hard as some people make it out to be once again. Because most people didn't grow up with these games, didn't grow up with the NES. They weren't trained in how video games used to be back then. But it was still pretty hard, and I managed. I beat the game. Little Tom was so proud of himself, and he felt he could take on the world after that kiss from his princess. She was finally saved for real. In this first Zelda, there was an actual true sequel to the first game, as it was mentioned within the games themselves. Fast forward a couple of years. My oldest brother and me had nothing in common. Basically, I have three brothers, two older ones and one younger one. I used to do mostly everything with my younger brother. We playing outside, playing with our toys, everything. And my two older brothers were basically teens already, so they were far away from us when it came to generation, I would say. But I had one thing that linked me to my oldest brother, which was very rare, and that was the Super Nintendo. We used to play the Super Nintendo all the time. We played almost every possible Super Nintendo game together. And we shared the Legend of Zelda more so than any of my other brothers did. So one day, my older brother, he called me into his room. And he said, he had a new game and he wanted to play it with me. The Triforce flew together in that intro. That orchestrated music, that sword that shot through the Triforce. Was Link back again? Watching my brother play this game. The dark beginning, I just didn't understand it. This game sure looked happier and cuter than its predecessors, but it felt so much more sad and dramatic. For the first time, I watched my brother play through the entire game before I picked it up myself. It was like watching a movie. A Link to the Past was wonderful. It didn't feel as intense as Adventure of Link, nor as confusing as The Legend of Zelda. But the world felt more unified somehow. The boss fights got even bigger, but didn't have that same fear-inducing atmosphere. They were so much easier. I still loved the game though. The adventure was there again. Traveling through Death Mountain, the Dark World, the concept of Link actually being a coward. I love this whole idea of the Dark World. The music, the atmosphere in the Dark World is absolutely insane. Swimming in the waters, you were actually able to swim and run. And the story, Ganon had won? How did he win? I just fucking started playing this game. The omnipresent feeling of death and despair whenever I entered the Dark World. It was thrilling to say the least. The game brought me so many emotions. The misty forests. How could something so beautiful exist in a game? The mist, the trees, the music. It was so tall and wide and everything. It was, and then you run upon the Master Sword. Now, this game was less intense than the previous ones, but holy crap did it deliver an atmosphere and emotions. And it seriously brought me closer to my older brother, because this is the initial game we bonded over more so than anything else. The magic in the game, the characters, this castle, it was so incredible. And it is not one of my all-time favorite Zelda games, but I can most definitely understand what other people think so. Several years later again, 1998, the period in my life I hated the most. I was bullied so badly, and not like people having fun with you, tying your shoelaces together, pulling a bit of practical jokes, no. I was beat up severely every day. I was cut, I was bruised, I was mentally and physically abused for 2.5 years straight. Now, I had this main bully and these people who tried to impress him by joining in on this fucking... Anyway, there was this one kid in that group. Some dipshit who called me his friend outside of school. He asked if I wanted to come over and play a video game with him. Now, one thing you have to understand. Back then there was no internet yet. 1998, the internet only started to surface about a year later from that point. So basically you had word to mouth, and magazines. That's all you had, and the commercials you had on TV. He asked me, do I want to play video game with him? The new Zelda just got released. I was like, what do you mean a new Zelda? Ocarina of Time just got released. We were sitting at his place. My eyes couldn't believe what they saw. It, it was full 3D. Actual 3D. You could look up and down around you. You could look up at the sky and the forest. It was beautiful. Floaty things, all these people, voices. I didn't know where to look anymore. Now, Ocarina of Time is by far also not one of my favorite games, but it was a turning point in video games for people who grew up with the NES like me. Ocarina of Time was a turning point where it redefined video gaming completely. And no other game before that, and no other game to this day afterwards, brought this feeling, this transition into 3D when you were watching Zelda and living Zelda. And it worked like that for any game. Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, those two games were those turning points. We went inside the Deku Tree. This game was insane. The eerie yet beautiful music, the atmosphere, the dark story. And then Goma happened. Holy shit. How she had evolved so beautifully from this giant crab-eyed thingy in these pixelated dungeons into this giant ass dark 3D fully rendered creature. I always loved Goma. And in any Zelda, Goma is one of the things I look forward to the most. The arachnid form is just so imposing. The tree died. I thought that was the greatest experience ever in gaming. But the story was only the beginning. My time was over though. That first dungeon took an hour or so, even longer, so playtime was over. I went home. I was about 14, I think, at this time. A couple of days later, I got the game myself. I don't remember the details, but we got the N64 for Christmas when it launched. I think Ocarina of Time, I got it for my birthday. That must have been 3 months afterwards. I'm not exactly sure anymore. So I started playing it myself. 3 huge dungeons later, I can breathe again. The game is finally over. This experience was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I pulled out the Master Sword because, that was my trophy. And then 5 more dungeons got announced. Each dungeon bigger than the 3 before that combined. How is this fucking possible? I died learning of everything that awaited me. How can a game seriously be this big? Never before, like I said, had a game touched me in such a way. The Forest Temple is the same thing with the Deku Tree. When I entered the Forest Temple, this is something nobody ever on this planet can experience again in this way. And that's the experience growing up with video games from that early on and then making that jump into 3D. The Forest Temple is one of the most beautiful levels ever created. And the shit that came after that, the pits of a fiery hell, an actual hell of doom, blood and zombies everywhere, cursed spiders, cathedrals, the music, the songs controlling time, the castle collapsing, all these adventures. I felt like I actually traveled through all of these worlds. The atmosphere, like I said, this jump from A Link to the Past to Ocarina of Time made you live this game, not just play it. It nicely kept getting better and better. It is far from being my personal favorite Zelda, but it sure as hell is the video game that marked me more so than anything ever has done and will be able to do again. A true masterpiece. By now, the internet started rising amongst common folk. My life got a little bit better. These 2.5 years, I never ever used video games as an escape. But Ocarina of Time sure as hell dragged me away from that world nonetheless. I broke down in front of my parents, crying. The torment of these fucking assholes, it became way too much for me to take. I took a couple of months off school. I met a couple of people there through smoking, through metal. I bonded with these people that were living in my neighborhood. And this kid, he said, why don't you come to my school? This started the best time of my life. During this time, like I said, I discovered smoking and metal, this whole new world. I started letting my hair grow long. I started wearing black, listening to metal. I loved depressing stuff in this period of my life. I would love the depressing shit in my movies, my music, my video games. And then the most beautiful thing ever happened. Majora's Mask got released. The posters had captivated me. Now, something you cannot understand when you live in America, for example, is the artwork in the European versions were really Escher-like, surreal, this dark green with these black artwork, with these shapes and these forms and this character that was hung in the background. I was like, holy shit! These dark, scary masks and the shadows. The tagline of this game, 72 hours to save the world. I was like, how can Nintendo permit themselves to do shit? Nintendo went from extremely beautiful to holy shit, how dark is this shit? I got the game at launch. I bought it myself. I jacked it into my N64 and never again was I the same. This game is ultimate perfection. It was dark, it was sad, melancholic, non-stop appending doom. This game found me at the most perfect moment in my life and it shaped me. It seriously shaped me. Never was there, nor would there ever be again a Zelda with such an incredible, imposing atmosphere. Sadness was all around in this game. All these people who stared death in the eye, all those characters who were screwing each other over, caught by depression and greed. And the story of the villain. I can't believe they didn't use Ganon again somehow. A new character. I thought, this could be interesting. And it was. The Skullcat had a story like no other villain I had known before. Because for the first time I could actually relate to him. I felt sad for him. I felt sorry for the dude that was about to destroy the entire planet. The final 5 minutes happened. My heart seriously skipped a beat. The music that went on, the atmosphere reached an utmost high at that time. It was seriously thrilling and I cannot believe how this game managed to do that. It truly was perfection. I loved young Link as well. Now, yeah, it was a bit a shame that he didn't grow up, but it made sense for the atmosphere of the game. His movement was so acrobatic and far from his blocky, how would you say that? Blocky Ocarina of Time feeling. Like, he got freed from all of that. His movements were that of a warrior with the saltos you could perform. He danced around his enemies. The side quests got insane. There were so many things to do. This game only suffered from one thing a lot of people claimed back then, and I tended to agree, and that was the lack of dungeons. Only 4 dungeons was a big letdown. That was like half as much as the previous game. Still, I think honestly in reality, it never really bothered me. Around 2002, I graduated. I got my diploma, finally school was over. My gift from my parents, what I asked for, the Nintendo GameCube. It's all I wanted, it's all I needed. I went on my bike to the city. The second graduation day was over. My parents gave me the money. I got it at launch. Again, not long afterwards, a new Zelda was announced. The Wind Waker. Cell shading? Cell shading? What the fuck is cell shading? They released a trailer showing what the GameCube could do. Now, yeah, it was like, a demo, a test demo to what the GameCube could do, but they didn't bring it that way. What the fuck was this shit? I saw Link's face and I felt like crying. What on earth did they do to my hero? All the epic adventures I had conquered, the dark lands I had traveled, the immense bosses I fought with heart and soul, for what? To become a little cartoon boy in a pajama? Sitting in a freaking canoe? Well, I couldn't let on any of that get me down. All Zelda had done for me in the past, what it did, the bonding and everything, I had to give it a chance. Especially now that I became an adult, basically. The music started, the story unfolded. This game was off to a pretty good start after all. All the things you were able to do, enemy weapons, you were able to use enemy weapons. The combat system was really elaborate and absolutely loved it. No Zelda ever before, nor thereafter had such an incredible feeling for adventure. And this is why, even though I had these initial reactions, The Wind Waker is my third favorite ever Zelda. For the first time, you actually experience an adventure. This feeling for adventure you see in movies and cartoons as a kid. No other Zelda brought that. Like the Wind Waker, when you were alone sailing on these oceans in the boat with the storms, it was the most immersive experience almost, I feel, that Zelda ever had. The next Zelda I bought was Twilight Princess on the Wii. The dark atmosphere of this game was amazing. I really felt they made up for that weird toon shit they had done before. Being able to transform into a wolf brought back some of those memories I had from Majora's Mask, and the Twilight Realm reinforced that feeling. But there were no feelings of sadness or melancholy from this Zelda. It was more mature, sure, and it had this dark adult vibe, but it felt empty to me. It always does, and it still does to this day. It looked incredible and had some amazing ideas, but something was missing. At this time of my life, I transitioned into a working period. I started a new education that didn't really do anything for me, so I was really in between things. So video games were like filling my time more so than ever before. It had the graphics, and when I went out on Hyrule Field, I was amazed. The field was huge. There was so many areas, but once again, so many areas. But they were all empty, just flat surfaces, one or two enemies scattered about. I expected so much more from this game, especially after the insane world that the Wind Waker offered. The mature vibe, incredible boss battles, and graphics were all it had for me. I had a great time playing it, and I do love it, but apart from the scene where Link carries Midna on his back through the rain, this game was just devoid of emotions. And Twilight Princess, from the time in my life I found it, and from everything the game had to offer, just left a bittersweet aftertaste. More Zeldas got released after that. A lot was on handheld. I don't really like handheld gaming that much. I prefer a big screen. How can you be so immersed in a game when your screen is tiny as shit? Still, after some time passed, I found the love of my life. Through my YouTube videos, actually, and she lived in Austria, several countries away. It was like 1500 plus kilometers away. And I moved there. A complete new country. I had to learn a new language. I was separated from everything I grew up from. And I felt so estranged. And for the first and only time ever, I used a video game to escape the world around me, basically. Because I didn't even speak the language. That game was Phantom Hourglass. I went in with no expectations. It was Toon Link again, the ocean was in it again, a sequel to Wind Waker in some ways, for again, actually noted and stated within these games. I really loved this game though, more than I thought I would. There were so many lovable characters, the feeling of adventure was there again. There were many things to discover, you sailed the open waters, you were free. So many islands and riddles, a boat to customize. I absolutely love the customizable boat. You were able to make like the steamboat, it was so ridiculous. The dungeons were brilliantly executed, and I loved the idea of the oceanscapes in Temple. It gets so much hate, and I can understand it, but it just hit me in the right spot, because when you got new equipments, you got new shortcuts, using the second screen to write on the map and all of that, the game did everything right for me. It made me feel very good in a time of my life where I just felt so alone, despite of the fact that I found the girl of my life, and that was like 7 years ago by now, approximately, I think. And still, the vast seas fit somehow with how I felt, and this game, it really made me feel a lot better. Because of these experiences, I decided to get Spirit Tracks soon afterwards. This game did everything wrong. Sure, it was entertaining. Sure, it had some incredible weapons and a better storyline somehow. It was more original, but it was so fucking tedious to play. Gone open world. You were stuck on this fucking lame fixed tracks going forward or backwards. Exploration in this game was nothing. Zero. Completely removed. And I hated that. The main temple idea was taken straight from the previous game. There's nothing original about it, even though now people are praising it for some reason, even though it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. There weren't really any characters to jump out from me. Stupid new races that were dumb. I don't know. It's like I played this game, but I feel like it was wiped from my memory I barely. It was in the same time period that I played it, but I don't know if I didn't need the escapism anymore. It left no impression on me whatsoever, and it is my least favorite Zelda. When I think back to what this game did to me in the time, what the game offered, I felt that whole Toon Link thing became a fucking gimmick, so cheap, a solution to poop out new Zeldas faster than the wind. And I just can't accept this game in any way, shape or form with any grain of respect. The worlds of Zelda at this point, after the last two games, it felt like they had died out. They just didn't offer anything new anymore. They stopped trying. We moved back to France for various reasons. And I found a job. I became a standard working class person. I didn't really know what to do with it. I want to find an education. I didn't know what to do. So the gaming didn't really mean much to me anymore. Besides being an amazing hobby that I loved, but in the time of my life, it was just life. It was just life. I got Skyward Sword. At this point, I just like gaming where I can't wait for the new games to see what they will bring me. But they never guided me anymore or find me in specific times in my life. Then Skyward Sword got released. I was very hyped about this game. A whole new world in the sky. They promised the biggest overworld ever. They promised an open world game. Better than Ocarina of Time, they said. They said they felt this game trumped Ocarina of Time. After a few days only of playing it, I felt calm. Sure, in the beginning, the story had me on the edge of the seat. But I was flying around in this so-called massive open world better than everything else, which basically had a quarter of the map. What did I find? Clouds. Clouds. Just clouds. Nothing but fucking clouds. You can't trust clouds. There was one freaking village in the entire game. Where are all the people? How can you screw this up so much? This tiny island was all you could come up with? It made me extra sad because all the environments were breathtaking, but there were no people in this world. You had one fucking side quest basically with the stupid crystals. You had 2 or 3 minigame islands and there was nothing in this world. This world was void of everything. There was nothing in it. But this is technically why Skyward Sword used to be one of my least favorite Zeldas, but the one thing that doesn't make it that bad is the amazing level design. The sunken forest, the desert with the time lapses, Skipper's Retreat is one of the most beautiful things in any Zelda game ever. The Silent Realms, this game had some of the most beautiful and original dungeon design ever. To this day, it still has the best dungeons, I feel. But none of that was able to save it because it was encompassed in this world that was empty as fucking shit. But you had these moments like Skipper's Retreat. You could fly next to a giant whale. This game was amazingly, gorgeously, wonderful, beautiful. The graphics, the atmosphere, the story, it was insane, but it was all overshadowed by how damn linear and empty this game was. I had really mixed feelings about this, and I just cannot rank this game higher than second to last. Because of how empty it was and how it was such a massive disappointment. This was the first game I bonded over with, the first Zelda I should say, with my fiance. She is like me in so many ways. The Legend of Zelda is also one of her favorite games. On her side of her life, she also grew up with these games. And this game to us, it was a con. We didn't get anything we were shown for. And we bonded with this game. We played it together. And the incredible atmosphere from these dungeons were amazing to us. But across from that, mirrored, this game offered nothing more but an empty, void world filled with nothing. Nothing. I've played other games like Link's Awakening, Forest Adventures, and even A Link Between Worlds, which I really liked. But none of these games particularly marked me. None of these games did anything special for me. So it's not like I have a lot to say here about these games. And next up, we're gonna get Breath of the Wild. I finally am in a place where I feel so good in my life. I'm in a perfect position. It's been 7 years with the girl of my life. It's been an amazing journey. I've been able to enjoy gaming for what it was without the games having to mean anything anymore at this point. But I have lived through so many of these Zelda games. All these games meant so much to me. Where Breath of the Wild better blow my fucking mind. We are finally getting this open world game I was promised with Skyward Sword. What am I expecting from this game? I want random side quests again like Majora's Mask offered it. I want characters with soul like the Wind Waker offered. I want secrets like the first game offered, the Legend of Zelda. I want the difficulty level, the RPG elements that Adventure of Link offered. I want Breath of the Wild to give me all the best features from the previous games and none of the negativity. One of the things I used to want was a battle scene. My ultimate dream in a Zelda, the ultimate dream of dreams was an ultimate battle scene where races would fight each other like Harry Potter and Narnia and Braveheart, where thousands of people would fight on two sides on one massive battlefield. Gorons and Dekus and Zoras and evildoers and shit like that. But I feel I got that with Hyrule Warriors. That dream actually got fulfilled with Hyrule Warriors. So I no longer feel I need that in this game. But I want this entire world. I want castles scattered about, villages, kings and queens. I want a great story with absolute non-linear gameplay, which we are already promised. I want a world filled with shit. I want a full world. I want Link to get closer to someone, which was something Skyward Sword did do great, that he had an actual friend he bonded with. And that was amazing in that game, and I really liked the relationship Link had with Zelda and Skyward Sword. I want Link to have a soul. They were on the right path, like I said, with Skyward Sword. I guess what I'm just truly hoping is for Nintendo to take all the things I loved from every Zelda and jam that into one single game. And it's starting to look pretty good already. So there we are. The end of the journey at this point, I guess, of this video. The Legend of Zelda is my all-time favorite franchise. As you may have noticed in this video, it brought me so much on so many key moments in my life. Zelda shaped me as a person. And I am always expecting a lot from this franchise due to everything it used to do in the past. And I feel the last couple of games, Nintendo just missed the mark. And I feel in Breath of the Wild, it has to be that ultimate Zelda that is gonna do everything right again. Thank you guys for listening to my story. Share me your stories in the comment section or in a video response. I would love to hear your story. I know this video is pretty long. It's like half an hour at least already. But for the 30th anniversary, 30 minutes, it's pretty fitting, I feel. I just wanted to go into great detail what these games meant to me. The story behind these games instead of just reviewing these games randomly like most people do. Because a lot of these games meant so much to me. Like I said, share me your stories. I'm honestly curious if any of these games meant anything to you particularly. What Zelda means to you. Thank you guys for listening. If you stick to the very end, that is. I hope it wasn't too boring for you guys. I just really felt like making this video about everything behind the games. Stay real.